Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Crushing Land. I'm Jonathan from The Land Method. Happy to be here with you today and discussing a topic that's come up quite a bit and something that a lot of people want to know, and that is which owner financing documentation should I use? What are the differences, and does it matter? So when it comes to owner financing a piece of property, and we're talking about land here, it's a little bit different from the house. It's the same sort of documents, but what we're talking about is specifically relating to land. When it comes to owner financing a piece of land, there's really three different ways that you can go with it. More than three documents, but three different ways that you can go. So one would be a mortgage. If you have a mortgage, you're also going to have a promissory note that goes along with it. That's one way of doing it. A second way is using an agreement for deed or a land contract. And the third way is using a lease purchase agreement, not a lease option, a lease purchase agreement. So we'll break them all down, explain it a little bit. So a mortgage is probably the one that most people are most familiar with because it's the one that goes along with housing, right? It's probably what you have on your own house. You are literally on the deed and you are shown as the owner of that property, but you have a promissory note that you signed with your lender where you promise them to pay X amount per month for a certain set of time. With that is the mortgage against the property, them having a lien against your property until you pay that off, and then they release that mortgage from there. So that's one that is probably the most common, the one that people are most familiar with. It's also the one that we hardly ever use when it comes to land. In fact, in all the deals that we've done over all the years, we've only used that, I believe, twice. And I'll give you an example of where it came into play. We had a buyer that came along and was purchasing a piece of property from us. I believe the purchase price was like $16,000 or something along those lines. I don't even remember. It's been a while now. And he came in and said that he would give us $12,000 down or $10,000 down. I don't even remember that number. And basically was saying, but I want a mortgage on it. Now, we were only into that property for like $4,000 or $5,000. And so with him giving us $10,000 down, even if he never made a single payment and we had to go through a judicial foreclosure, we're still ahead, right? Because it would cost us a couple $1,000s to do that. I believe he gave us 12, but even if he only gave us 10, that we'd be down to $8,000 because $2,000 to go through a judicial foreclosure. We're only into the property for $4,000 or $5,000. So at that point, we owned the property and we made $3,000 already. So in that case, it obviously made sense to do it. Why don't we use mortgages more often? Well, for the exact reasons that I just said. Usually the numbers aren't that high. So if you have a piece of property that you're into for a few $1,000s and they basically give you what you're into it and they never make a payment, you're going to be in a situation where you need to go through judicial foreclosure, and it takes a while. This takes a long time to go through that process, a number of months, in order to get the property back. It just isn't worth the headache. Now, if you do have a situation where somebody's coming along and giving you a substantial down payment, and I've had students that I've worked with that I've helped them with this, where they're paying, well, thousands and thousands over what you have into it, and it's a very, very, very good down payment number, and then they're going to pay you very good per month, then it might make sense to do that. But again, it's going to be on few properties, few and far between. So that leaves us with the other two, an agreement for deed or land contract and the lease purchase. In reality, when it comes to how they are structured and how they come to you as the investor, how the payments come to you and all that, and how the numbers work, they're basically the exact same thing. There's really no difference. What the difference is what law they fall under. Lease purchase is obviously under rental law, right? That's a rental agreement. Whereas a land contract goes under a purchase sale agreement. So it's actually under financing on ownership. Now, when it comes to the land contract or an agreement for deed, however you want to term it, generally speaking, almost every time it never leaves your name. So that is one thing that's different from a mortgage. You retain ownership of the property in that case. You retain ownership. The document may or may not be recorded. So it really depends on the state laws, the state regulations. You'd have to talk to an attorney there in that state. And when it comes to that, it's just a matter of understanding what you're getting yourself into. So if it's an unrecorded document and there's really no recourse, there's really no harm in using that, and we use them quite extensively. So an agreement for deed, it lists the price, it lists what they're paying you up front, it lists the total purchase price, it lists what they're giving you for interest and all of those things. And from there, that's what you're getting each and every month, and it's just spelled all out. And like I said, in some cases, it's turned into just having a situation where people are, they're getting these things and they walk away, and you can just take the property back. But in other cases, that's not the case. Sometimes what happens with these situations or with these properties, depending on where they're located, and this is why you need to know the state laws, is you still need to go through judicial foreclosure, especially if it's recorded. Some states, that's very simple to get it. It's just writing them a check, very small amount, and you can take the property back. In other cases, though, you're going through this expensive foreclosure process. So enter the lease purchase agreement. What is the lease purchase agreement? Well, basically, it's a rent-to-own agreement. So basically what they're doing is they're giving you the same thing. They're giving you a down payment, and then they're paying you X amount per month. The difference between a lease purchase and a lease option is that with a lease purchase agreement, at the end of the term, whatever it may be, 5 years say, at the end of 5 years, rather than having some sort of balloon, right, they have an option to purchase the property for X amount. It's over. They've paid the full amount. So at that point, they own it. It's just a matter of deeding it over to them. So what are the advantages to the lease purchase agreement? Well, in most states, it is a rental agreement. It falls under rental law. What does that mean? It means that if they stop paying, it's the same as an eviction process, as opposed to the process of having to go through any sort of foreclosure. What are the plus and minuses for any of these agreements? Well, when it comes to the mortgage, it's obviously the most solid. It's the most solid around for everybody, but it's very rare that it actually works in you as the investor, as the seller's favor, based on what the numbers are. So that's why we don't use it that often. When it comes to the other two, it really just depends on the state and where things are at and what the regulations are. Right? When it comes to the seller and buyer side, the land contract is a little bit simpler right from the get-go to understand. Everybody just kind of understands the numbers. And so that makes it easier from there. But obviously, if you're putting yourself in a situation that's risky because of that, well, you don't want to necessarily use that agreement. You want to be doing what's best for you. The lease purchase agreement, or the rent to own, it takes a little bit more handholding. It's the exact same numbers, but it's explaining to them what that is. It's, rent to own agreement, and this is how it works. And, technically, you're renting the property from me during this time. We're giving you credits every month for it and all of that. It all works out the same, but sometimes buyers are a little bit shy because of that, and you just have to explain things better to them. Which one should you use? Well, like I said, the first one rarely gets used. Out of the other two, it really depends on where you're working. And I can't give you an answer for that, and I won't give you an answer for that. The bottom line for that is you need to talk to a real estate attorney in that state. And what you want to be talking to them about is, hey, I'm owner financing a piece of property, or I'm going to owner finance a number of properties, and whatever area that you're in. And I don't mean area as far as area of the state. I mean area as in like monetary area. Like, this is the area that I'm working on properties that I'm financing, and most of them are around $10,000. Most of them are around $20,000. Most are around $30,000, whatever they are. If they're all over the place, fine. They're all over the place. I do deals, owner financing deals from $10,000 to $30,000. Whatever it may be, but you need to explain that to them. You also have to explain what you're expecting as down payments. I'm owner financing properties for $10,000. I'm getting $1,000 down. I bought the property for $2,000. All right. I want to make sure that if they don't make a single payment, that I am not going to be in a situation where I'm losing a ton of time and a ton of money trying to go after them judicially. What's the best way to protect myself? Can I do a land contract and have it unrecorded? And is there no recourse? We just take the property back by sending them a notice. Can I use a lease purchase agreement? And again, there's no recourse. They just take it back by sending them an eviction notice. It varies state to state. When we first started this, the reason the whole lease purchase thing came into the equation a number of years ago, over a decade ago, was because the state that we were working in had very strong laws when it came to owner financing properties, and that included land contracts or agreement for deeds. So because of that, the attorney that we met with created the lease purchase agreement, and we've used it extensively since, and it's worked its way into other programs now since then, right? But the point was because it was a protection to us. Then we went to other states and they were like, no, there's no difference. You can use the land contract just as easy as you can use the lease purchase. There's really nothing when it comes to any sort of recourse. So you just need to know that and have those questions with a real estate attorney. Obviously, the other thing that you need to be very clear with them about when you're doing this is it's for vacant land. There are different rules when it comes to evicting or taking back a home from somebody than there is for just a piece of vacant land. So you need to explain that very clearly. So if you lay that out to them, there's the difference of those three type of agreements. And if you lay that out to them, the real estate attorney is going to be familiar with all of those things. But if you lay out to them what you want to do, you're going to get the best advice for that particular state. And then obviously you just have those conversations as you go to different states. So hopefully that helped, gave you a brief overview of the different types. All of that information is included in detail in our Land Riches Blueprint program. It's also included in our goal coaching, even more detail and a breakdown of exactly how we fill in those agreements and how we use them all. So if you have any interest in that, if you want to find out more, all of our information is below. Feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to discuss that with you. And as always, make sure you like and subscribe, follow us more. We're on here every week and we do a bunch of extra bonus content as well. Keep following us and make sure that you're here and in tune to learn more and more about land investing. So thanks a lot for tuning in. Catch you guys next week.